Hey everybody, and welcome to part 2 of the Future World Park playthrough. It's been a while since the first episode. Work's kind of been kicking my butt the last few weeks, so it took a little bit longer to get this next part of the playthrough done, but anyway, here we are. So the first part of the build, we started off by doing a bit of rearranging of the monorail that kind of went around the border of the park. We added quite a few coasters, including the Steel Wild Mouse, the Steel Mini or Junior Coaster with the rocket cars, a Togo style stand-up coaster, as well as a small mine train coaster right at the end. We also made some changes to the vertical drop coaster called Thunder Twist as well, just to, just make it a little bit more interesting, I thought, and I think the changes turned out pretty nicely. We also spent a little bit of time getting the kind of general layout of the park going. I decided to kind of split the park into 4 outer quadrants stemming from like a central city area near the park entrance. Each of these quadrants will have a kind of theme or style to it, 2 of which we started off already, one of which is the volcanic theme, and the other was a bit of a mining theme, which we'll continue on with today. We also added quite a few gentle rides as well, including the car ride, the mini helicopters, and the observation tower, plus a couple thrill rides too. I'm going for a slightly different strategy with this scenario because the guest requirement is 1500 guests by the end of October Year 3, which with the style that I usually build in, which is typically lots of scenery and landscaping, is quite challenging. So I'm basically trying to get all the rides built first, and then I'm going to come back and do the theming and landscaping later. I think this will pay off financially as we get more rides up and running sooner, and get more of a ride income going sooner rather than later, if that makes sense. As opposed to what I usually do, which is kind of decorate a ride right after I build it. So we are switching it up a little bit here, but we'll see how it goes. Anyway, on to year 2 of the build here. So first off, I made a few layout changes to the mine train coaster. The biggest change of which was adding a section kind of underneath the path that I'd kind of built out there adding a section under the path to the edge of the park, as I wanted to kind of consume that awkward bit of space there. I had to make a few other small tweaks just to ensure its average speed wasn't too high, because the empty train barely made it back to the station as it was, so had to kind of be careful there. I then quickly added a Vekoma boomerang at the other side of the park. It provided a nice boost to the soft guest cap, as well as being, quite cheap and very profitable. So just wanted to get that down there, although I'm not 100% sure I'll keep the color scheme. Added a haunted house in the opposite corner of the park as well, as there wasn't really any rides out there, so just wanted to make sure that the guests that found themselves outside of the park had something to do. Then I added Marcel Voss's favourite coaster, the Heartline Twister. It was inspired by the Dive Loop Ultra Twister Togo coaster in Japan. I thought it made sense for this area of the park, and the narrow design worked well in the that kind of narrow space just at the top end there. I actually think it looks half decent. It's not really a coaster I ever built, but I'm happy with how it turned out. I named it after one of my favourite games called Portal. I don't know, just those rolls and the little transfer sections. It just, for some reason, it kind of brought back memories of that game for some reason. So that's what I went with there. To try and replicate the layout as best I could, I actually added chain hill pieces to the first drop, as well as the the original lift hill, just so it was like an open section of the design. Otherwise, the Heartline Twister track by default is completely enclosed. So just wanted to keep that section open. So actually, the entire first drop and the next the next climb up is all chain hill pieces, but it doesn't actually look that obvious, but I think it makes the design maybe look a little bit more interesting, and of course more reminiscent of the coaster I was trying to replicate in the first place. Straight after that, I got onto another coaster, and now working on a new area of the park with another Vekoma style ride in the Flying Dutchman, or just the flying coaster. Again, something I haven't built for years, but it was really fun to get stuck into another one. I decided that I really wanted to implement a pretzel loop on the layout, which I feel like I'm not sure if it's common on the Flying Dutchman sort of Vekoma style track, but I think it's pretty common along. I think it's more so common with the B&M flying coasters. But yeah, I really wanted to put one of those in. So I made sure to actually build that first, just kind of wrapped around the main path there. I'm not sure if it's strictly a pretzel loop, but I think it's the closest you can get outside of using OpenRCT2. So yeah, building one of the showcase elements, I guess, is something I learned from Brian Andrelzik. Yeah, it actually really helped me in this situation because building the pretzel loop, incorporating that after you've already started the layout can be a little bit tricky. So yeah, building that first and then building the layout around that really worked out in this situation, I think. I think you could apply this same technique to pretzel loop, just a standard vertical loop that you want in a kind of prominent standout location, or a big splashdown of a water ride, or anything else like that basically. Anyway, so after the pretzel loop, I kind of just went back and put the station and lift hill in where I thought it would look the most sensible, and it just kind of fell nicely into place after that. I added a vertical loop over the crater, which I thought ended up in a good kind of prominent spot as well. But I did try to make sure that the majority of the layout had the riders on their stomachs as opposed to on their back. So I think too much time on your back would be a little bit uncomfortable. I ended up calling the flying coaster Starman, which is based on the David Bowie song of the same name. I also tried to kind of base the color scheme on the song cover picture from back in the day. Not sure if it was a single or just as one of the songs on the album. Speaking of names, thanks so much to everyone who suggested a name for the Togo stand-up. I got plenty of great name ideas. I ended up using the suggestion Ashfall from Miss T Rose for the stand-up coaster, which I think was suitable given the colour scheme that I ended up picking in the end. However, I used Olympus Mons from Frank Van Dorp to rename the vertical drop coaster from Thunder Twist, as I thought that was, given that it was going into the volcano, that made the most sense. Olympus Mons, of course, being the largest mountain on Mars. So I thought that was a really cool suggestion, and thank you very much for that. A number of people suggested Eruption, which I ended up using for a launched freefall instead. Yeah, thanks to everyone for the suggestions. It's I really, really appreciate it, and it's always fun to hear what you guys come up with, because naming rides isn't really my strong suit. After that was done, I added the vomit machines, aka the space rings on the edge of the city. I also went back and added another little helix going the opposite direction at the top of the lift hill of the Mine Train coaster. I don't know, got tempted to make another change and I ended up going for it. It barely made it back to the station, but it works in the end. I then went back over to the same part of the park as Starman, and I haven't really identified a theme for this area, by the way. I think it will depend on the scenery types that get unlocked later, so I'm going to have to check that out. But I'm thinking a space station or space western theme of some sort. Anyway, I got on with building the next big attraction of this area, which is a B&M Twister. Even though this is one of the more expensive coasters, by this time I had quite a lot of money coming in, so I didn't have to wait around for funds at all, which was really good. I think this layout is somewhat compact, but it has lots of inversions. I spent a fair bit of time off camera playing around with ideas before I actually did a recording of the build, but was very happy with the end result. The biggest part I was uncertain about was where to put the barrel roll. I was gonna have it over the station, but it made the layout look a little bit awkward overall, so I ended up doing a batwing after the vertical loop, and then a large drop that led back into a barrel roll over the lift hill. I then did some interlocked corkscrews with a very similar turnaround section to the one I did in Funtopia, where I changed the layout of Grapevine. Then it just finishes off with a couple turns back into the station again. I probably cut myself short on the brake run just a little bit. I think it's only 2 tiles long, but it's all good. It gets the job done. I ended up calling this one Space Odyssey, which was another great name suggestion for the stand-up coaster from Cheesecake Militia. So many thanks for that one as well. Ended up giving it a nice dark purple or dark blue colour scheme in the end, which I think provided a nice contrast to the others in the park, which were typically kind of bright for the most part. I then followed along kind of a similar idea with the station building and just used those purple wall textures, as well as a few pieces of the abstract theming set with the glass walls, just painted them the same colour as the coaster. I think that also helped give the building kind of a more modern feel overall. After that was done, I finally got onto the final quadrant of the park, and I started it off with a wooden coaster, which may seem a little bit out of place here, but I do have some plans re a scenery style for this area, which you might be able to figure out pretty soon. It's a pretty simple out and back sort of Woodie. It was a rather awkward space to work with for a wooden coaster, as it was kind of a square plot to work with, and it also wasn't that long, so you really only had space for like 1 or 2 consecutive drops along a straight line at most, which for a wooden coaster I feel like you need 2 or 3 typically. So yeah, it was a little bit of a challenge to get something going there, but I think it's not too bad overall. It's got lots of curve drops, but yeah, does the job nicely, I think. Wooden coasters are also great for the soft gas cap. I think they contribute about 105 gas to your park there, so that was another good reason to get the Woodie down. Gave the wooden coaster a bit of a wooden station building, which I guess kind of looks like it belongs in the mining section of the park, but it doesn't matter. I think it looks alright. I then added a small pond with a path around the perimeter, followed by a log flume. Again, you're probably thinking this is a strange choice for the park, but what I am planning for this section of the park here is to turn it into kind of a planet Earth themed area. A couple reasons I'm kind of going for this sort of theme is, one, I kind of missed working with my usual palette of items, or just the regular trees and shrubs that I usually like to use, but I also thought it would be a fun idea to use as one of the themes for the park, which I think is meant to be based on another world sort of thing. So yeah, just thought it would be a fun idea to incorporate a planet Earth themed area. Anyway, so that's just about all we've got time for, I think. So I've done most of the rides. There might be some small ones to add yet, but I think the next episode is basically going to be just theming, decorating, and landscaping, as well as hopefully achieving the objective. So quite looking forward to seeing how that goes. Anyway, thank you all very much for watching, and look forward to hopefully seeing you in the next video. Thanks very much, and cheers. Bye.